I am glad to be here. I had a good time at Basic last night. Thank you for having me. And yeah, it was fun. And then we went to the Cereal Shack. Have you been? You should go. I recommend the Golden Grahams. I bring you greetings on behalf of Passport, where David and I have been working for 20 years. I bring you greetings on behalf of the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship. I'm their elected leader this year. And when I represent them, I say, estoy trabajando en mi español porque la familia de Dios hablas mucho idiomas. I am working on my Spanish because the family of God speaks many languages. And we have lots to learn from the family of God here and around the world. Goodness. I'm supposed to talk on goodness, so I looked it up, being the unrighteous person that I am. Goodness. The state of being good. Ta-da! Not very helpful. Goodness, moral excellence, virtue, kindness, generosity, the best part of anything, like the best bite of a peach, the essence. If I were, or as I am, a child of God, I'm kind of wondering now. As a child of God, if I have to assign a Bible verse to goodness, I pick Micah. Micah 6:8 that says, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly. If we could all live like that, we wouldn't need a lecture series on goodness because we would know what it would look like. I want to say two things to you today on goodness. Seek it in each other. Offer it to the world. Especially in a world where the economy is doing a dive bomb, where people are wearing shoe bombs, and where we're polarized in politics and in religion and over territory. Still, seek goodness in each other. Offer goodness to the world. It matters. It matters. So before you start texting the person sitting next to you or daydreaming about fall break, like a flight attendant, I invite you to hit the off button, close the screen on the world out there, and be present enough, be brave enough, be unplugged enough to leave yourself vulnerable to the possibility that God might actually speak to you today. Might actually speak clearly in a wake you up, slap you in the face kind of way. Pray with me. God, thank you for creating this beautiful morning, for being as close as every breath we will take today. Help us to inhale what you would say to our souls about goodness and how we can all be better offering of that in the world. Because you are good all the time. And we give you all the praise and honor and thanksgiving. In Jesus' name. Every time. Amen. Consider Genesis 1. God created the heavens and the earth. All you see, all you don't see. Earth was a soup of nothingness, a bottomless, empty, inky blackness. God's Spirit brooded like a bird above the watery abyss. God spoke, light. And there appeared light. And God saw that it was good. Then there was water and land, and it was I go to an African American church on Sundays. I'm used to them talking back to me, or us talking back. My son's still learning. I'm like, just make sure you speak at the right time. There you go. There was water and land, and it was good. And before there was evening, and before there was even a sun or a moon, there was an orchard and a deep, deep garden of greenness. And it was good. Then before lions roamed the Serengeti or hippos snorted in a pond, God put minnows and whales in the water and bluebirds in the sky, and it was good. Then, after all that goodness, God created something very good. God made people. God made you and me. And he said, I'm going to give you all this goodness. Everything you need is right here. Do you hear it? From the very beginning of time, all God wanted to do was give us goodness. And then God gave us the keys to the car and said, be responsible for it. Take good care. It's all gassed up and ready to go. I love you. And like a 16-year-old with a Mustang, generation after generation of God's people have largely blazed a trail of destruction in every corner of this garden, leaving us in a blue haze of sadness, holding our breath, still believing that there really is goodness in the garden. Because there is. God's love and for God's creation is alive and well. God created you and me fearfully, beautifully, wonderfully made. And God still looks at us and says, you are good. Seek goodness in each other. Offer it to the world. I run into the glow of God's goodness all the time. Like Sister Mary Sunshine, when she gives a pedicure to ladies in Birmingham, she asked me about my next trip to Africa. She says, I want to go there someday. I want to take my foot care ministry to the women in Africa who work so hard all day long. It's the most practical example of somebody asking to go to Africa. People want to go. Often I'm not sure what they want to do when they get there. But Sister Mary Sunshine had an idea, and it was justice and kind, and it was mercy. I thought it was a beautiful expression of goodness. There are plenty of places in the world where goodness glows, but there are also plenty of places in the world where it is broken and needs healing. Did you know that there are 1.5 billion people on the planet who do not have access to drinking water today? They just don't have it. They have to spend their days walking to find it. About a third of those people live on less than $1 a day. And I ate a $3 bowl of cereal last night, and it was good. That poor people living in the slums of cities like Nairobi pay 5 to 10 times more for water than the wealthier people that don't live in the slums of Nairobi. Because people jack the prices up on it. It's hard to get. The 5-minute shower that you and I took this morning, if it was 5 minutes, is more water than those people will use all day long today. How did it get so lopsided? How did it become that we have so much and there are so many that have so little? How did it get out of balance? 200 years ago, most of us were just living on the same economic level. There was no global economy. We were all subsistent farmers. Do you know what subsistent farmers means? It means if the rain comes, the crops grow. If the rains don't come, the crops don't grow, and then you're hungry. We all lived like that 200 years ago. But with the advent of technology, initially the railroad, the gap between the poor and the rich started to grow. Because if you lived near a railroad, you could you had access to selling stuff or going places. But if you didn't live near the railroad, you couldn't. The people with access to technology got richer, and the people without access to the railroad or were colonized by it in Asia and Africa and South America. People with access got richer. The people that didn't have access to technology got poorer and poorer. And now, as the data-driven first world gets richer and richer, there is little opportunity for third world countries to catch up. They haven't caught up from the railroad. Initially, the gap between the rich and the poor grew because of the railroad, but now, think about how much information we have at our fingertips in this room right now. Sitting in this room, don't turn it on. Information is power. Technology is power. And for those of us who have access to information, we have a lot of power. And those without access to it, well, they sink further and further into the path of destruction in the garden. They sink deeper into the muck of the swamps in the garden, and it is impossible to get out. It's called being stuck in the cycle of extreme poverty. In his book, The End of Poverty, world economist Jeffrey Sachs explains that the gap between the world's richest and poorest economies has increased over the last 2 decades in ways that have never before existed in humanity. Admittedly, I am way oversimplifying it. I am a doodler, not a world economist. But what if those with the access to power used it for goodness? What if there was a goodness revolution? Used it to build bridges between the rich and the poor. Used it to build bridges. Used it to dig wells or water gardens. That would be good. What if kids in Africa who dream of growing up to be doctors and nurses and engineers had access to computers the way my children do? That would be good, right? What if women and girls were empowered to have the same kind of dreams as the boys and men around the world? But many of them spend up to 8 hours a day going back and forth from a water source that may or may not be drinkable, but it's all they have. And so every 15 seconds, a child dies in the world because they don't have access to clean water. They die of completely preventable diseases. Did you know, though, for the first time, unlike any time in history, there is hope. The world economy, even though it has struggled due to our own conspicuous consumption, is still capable of bridging the extreme poverty gap. It's the possibility that Bono is preaching. U2 lead singer. And he's calling on the goodness in God's creation to help wipe out extreme poverty, crippling poverty, through the Millennium Development Goals. These are 8 goals that are agreed upon by all the world's countries, world's leading development institutions. They're endorsed by the Methodists, the Evangelical Lutherans, the Church of the Brethren, the Episcopal Church, the Mennonite Church, the American Baptists, and the Cooperative Baptists. The Christian family of God is joining hands across denominations. World leaders are joining hands across government boundaries to embrace the idea that it is possible to eradicate extreme poverty, the people that live on less than $1 a day, by 2025. And I wonder if Carson-Newman College wants to help. That is one massive, big, old heaping helping of goodness. Righteousness, kindness, and mercy. As a boy, Bono says that he was 9 years old in Dublin when he first saw a man walk on the moon. He thought that he knew what America was about because of Elvis. But then it became about something bigger. It meant having a sense of infinite possibility, doing things that everyone says can't be done. The world said, you can't walk on the moon, but we did. The world says you can't eradicate extreme poverty, but we can. He says, more than ever, we need to renew the sense of adventure and purpose. Beating AIDS and extreme, stupid poverty, this is our moonshot. This is our civil rights struggle, our anti-apartheid movement. This is what the history books will remember our generation for or blame us for if we fail. What will our grandchildren say about us? I was born in Zimbabwe. My parents were missionaries for 20 years, Southern Baptist missionaries for 20 years. But as David and I have continued to take passport students to Africa over the last decade, we are seeing an Africa that my father never saw. My father never saw millions of children orphaned by HIV/AIDS pandemic. Poverty, further exaggerated by the inconvenient truth of cyclical drought, today paralyzes farmland that is dependent on that subsistent farming. They're still living the way we lived 200 years ago because they lacked access to technology. We did a really good job of taking Jesus along with us as missionaries, but technology, the access to it, we need to work on. And it's a cycle that cannot be broken alone. Malawi is a Christian nation, wonderful Christian people, and I've seen the goodness of God as I've walked alongside the care teams who sit with people who are dying with AIDS. One person goes inside to pray with the patient. Another one will go outside and gather firewood. Another one brings the water. Another one sweeps the dirt. There is no medicine. This is what they can do. These Christian Malawians are the very hands and feet of Christ, daily helping to help their brothers and sisters die with a breath of dignity. They teach me about the goodness in the garden. They make me want to offer goodness back to the world. So 6 years ago, I'm sitting in my hotel room at Disney World, watching CNN, and a 30-second soundbite comes on the TV that says, there's a drought, fourth of the worst of 4 droughts that have happened in Malawi in the last 10 years. Not only that, but 5 million people in a country of 14 million, 5 million people are at risk of hunger, disease, and even starvation. My heart broke in a way that I can't explain. I finally felt called to something bigger than myself in a way I cannot describe. I contacted the relief agencies that Passport has worked with over the years. I said, what are we doing? I want to help. Crickets were chirping. There had been a giant tsunami in Southeast Asia, and there was a hurricane called Katrina in New Orleans, and the world was responding to the massive chaos. But Malawi was getting lost in the shuffle, and it was at that moment, not having a clue how to do it, that Watering Malawi was born. I'm a graphic designer. I have a seminary degree. I have no idea about hydraulics or engineering or irrigation. But God didn't call me to do those things. God didn't call me to go to Africa and start digging wells. God just called me to do what I do and what I'm equipped to do, what I'm gifted to do, which is all God calls you to do. What is it about who you are and how you are uniquely made that can interact with the brokenness of the world? So the first thing I did was sit down with the only people that I knew would listen to me, students, high school students, college students, seminary students, children, and I said, here's the problem. What are we going to do? And boy, they had some ideas. They got busy. I didn't ask them to raise money. I said, tell the story. raise awareness. 6 years and almost $1 million later, entire villages have been transformed by the introduction of simple irrigation that allows farmers to grow gardens year-round. They grow more corn. Now they can store it and not be hungry. Now they can sell it at market and make a little money and start climbing out of that dollar a day. Students, through their churches and communities and campuses, have provided deep borehole wells for $6,000. Drought, meaning that little girls don't have to spend all their day walking for water. If they're spending all their day walking for water, where are they not? Right, school. Drought is not just about water. New gardens are growing. Then we started digging holes and filling up the ground with water and little fingerling fish. New source of protein, healthier children, something else to sell at the market. We're putting in toilets and hand washing stations in overcrowded school because the ability for children to just wash their hands at school means that 50% of the sickness goes down. Healthier children make better students who learn to read, who actually can become what their dreams are, doctors and lawyers and nurses, because they can stay in school. They're smart children. God sees them and loves them and says, "You are good." Just like God says to our children on this side of the ocean. Students in the U.S. are changing the lives of students in my backyard. And I am in awe of the power and the goodness that I see both in them and that I'm seeing through them. And it's largely being done by technology. You are the people with all the power. You have the ability to offer that to those who have none. But I realize that you live in a complicated time. The world feels different to me these days. Out there in the garden, it's a little unclear what it's going to look like for you when you leave Carson-Newman. So I want to leave one image with you as you consider the chaos in the world, and then I'm done. You can go. I took 20 students for the first time with me to Malawi this summer in July. And we saw schools, we saw the work that they had been funding for a few years. And one of the day on Tuesday, this group of students was asked to do a campaign, a walking campaign, organized by a local NGO, non-government organization. We were introduced to one school that has about 9,000 students, 4 bathrooms. We walked from that school 6 kilometers to the next school, raising awareness in the community that these families that have flocked to the cities, creating these slums, looking for work, looking for a better life for their children, have now overcrowded the schools, and they haven't been able to keep up with the facilities at the school. So we were walking, and within minutes, each of the 20 students had a new little best friend. Somebody came up and grabbed their hand, and I think they had been instructed to help the white kids get from one school to the next, because we were walking 6 kilometers in chaos. My little friend walked up, grabbed my hand, and she said, "My name is Letitia." I said, "Well, that is a beautiful name." "My name is Colleen." "Oh, well, that is a beautiful name. Thank you." We walked and talked, we danced. She told me her friend's name and the name of her school. She was practicing her English. It was very impressive. We were avoiding getting hit by passing cars and trucks crammed with supplies and people in a busy city. Music was blaring, news cameras rolling, police escorts directing traffic, and I was praying in the midst of this organized chaos that no one would get hurt. In particular, I was worried about my U.S. team walking hand in hand with the world, largely unaware of how precarious traffic can be in sub-Saharan Africa. There is no 911. My hand was sweaty, but Letitia still smiled up at me, never letting go. We kept walking. "What do you like to do for fun?" She didn't understand that question, so I tried another one. "Tell me about your family. Well, I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. My father died. Made me sad. I thought he probably had died of HIV/AIDS because there's 1 million children like her in Malawi. But no, she said, I said, was he sick? She said, no, his mother killed him. She poisoned him. Oh. She said the grandmother wanted the money in the bank. Extreme poverty has a culture all its own, one that I will never understand. I said, I'm so sorry. We kept walking. A little while later, Letitia said, today is my birthday. I said, oh, happy birthday. So I took off a bracelet I had bought a couple of days ago at a curio shop down the street, and I said, put it on her arm. I said, happy birthday. She said, oh, thank you. I will always remember the bracelet that my friend Colleen from America gave me on my birthday. Good. Well, it looks really pretty on you. Does your family go to church anywhere, Letitia? Oh, yes. We go to the Catholic church just over there. Good. So, do you have a favorite Bible story? Oh, yes. What is it? John. Oh, that's a good story. I said, do you have a favorite Bible verse? She said, yes. I thought, wow. Surely a little girl who has seen her father murdered by her own grandmother has no verse. Surely a child walking through the dust on her birthday has other things to think about. And if she doesn't have a Bible verse, I've got one ready. Maybe I can offer some goodness today to Letitia. But she said, no, I have one. I have a verse. It's from John chapter 14, verse 1. And I looked at her and I said, well, what does that verse say? You know it? Do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. Wow. When you feel overwhelmed by the brokenness of the world, by the destruction in the garden, do not let your heart be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in Jesus. Seek goodness. Keep your eyes wide open. Not only will you find goodness glowing in the garden, you might just encounter the face of Christ. Through Sister Mary Sunshine, through a little girl that happens to walk with you on a dusty day. Offer goodness. Seek goodness in others. Do justice. Love kindness. Walk humbly. For goodness' sake. Amen.